Welcome to the deep dive. We like to get to the heart of things here. Cut through all the fluff and figure out what really matters. Today, we're going to be diving into something that I think a lot of our listeners are really into: exercise and working out, and especially all the new fitness trends. There are new routines popping up every day.
Yeah, it seems like everywhere you look, someone's promising some crazy transformation with the latest and greatest fitness fad.
So we wanted to take a look at some of the things that are out there. We dug through some fitness publications and got some expert opinions. And what we found out is that some of the most common exercises and some of these trends that everybody's doing might actually be putting you at risk.
Right. There's a lot more to it than just getting a good workout.
So in this deep dive, we want to break it all down for you. We're going to be looking at some of the potential dangers that might be hiding behind those six-pack abs. We also want to give you guys some safer options so you can still reach your fitness goals without, hurting yourself. So let's jump right in. Let's start with an exercise that seems to be both loved and feared in the fitness world.
Kettlebell swings. We found this great piece from Steel Supplements that highlights the potential downsides of this really popular move.
Yeah, kettlebells, they're great. You can do a lot with them. Great for strength building, great for conditioning. But the swing, it can be a bit tricky. The technique needs to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it's not just about, swinging it around and hoping for the best. It's about understanding how that movement impacts your body.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have this idea that kettlebell swings are primarily an arm exercise.
Right. Like they're just using their biceps to hoist that weight up.
Yeah, like a bicep curl almost.
Yeah, but that's not really how it works, right? The power for the swing should be coming from your posterior chain. Think hamstrings and glutes. Those are the big muscles that should be doing the work, driving that kettlebell up.
And if you're not using those bigger muscle groups and instead you're just relying on your arms, the speed and the momentum of the swing can put a lot of stress on your shoulder. Yeah, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on that shoulder joint.
And we're talking about the rotator cuff, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the group of muscles and tendons that help stabilize your shoulder. If you don't have proper shoulder flexion and you're not controlling the movement, all that force and repetition can lead to some nasty rotator cuff injuries and inflammation too.
Ouch. Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
No, not at all. And it's really important to get the technique right from the beginning. That's why the article really stresses the importance of working with a qualified instructor, especially when you're first starting out. Someone who can show you the ropes and make sure you're not setting yourself up for an injury.
I think that's great advice for any exercise, really.
Absolutely.
Now, I know a lot of people are looking for alternatives, especially if they're just starting out and maybe they're a little intimidated by the kettlebell swing. Luckily, the article suggests some great exercises that work those same lower body muscles without putting so much stress on your shoulders.
Yeah, they mentioned things like broad jumps and cable pull-throughs. Barbell hip thrusts are another good option. And you could even try sumo deadlifts.
Now let's move on to another exercise that tends to cause a lot of debate, especially when it comes to knee health: the leg extension machine.
Oh yeah, this one's a classic. It's designed to isolate your quads, the muscles on the front of your thighs.
I know some bodybuilders use it specifically for that reason, to really target those muscles.
Exactly. And it's also used in some rehabilitation programs because it allows for very controlled movement.
But for general leg strength and conditioning, are there better options?
Well, a lot of fitness professionals argue that exercises that involve multiple joints and muscle groups working together, what we call closed kinetic chain exercises, are more effective and functional.
Things like squats and lunges.
Yeah, exactly. They engage more muscles and they mimic movements that you actually do in everyday life.
So what's the main concern with the leg extension machine then?
The main concern is that it puts a lot of direct force across the knee joint, that shearing force. And that can be a problem, especially if you already have any knee issues.
So it's not necessarily a bad exercise in itself, but more about how it's used and who's using it.
Right. If you're going to do leg extensions, you got to make sure you're using the right weight and the right form. You want to sit back in the machine properly and extend your legs without locking out your knees. If you feel any sharp pain, you got to stop immediately.
Makes sense.
They also give a great tip in the article, which is to make sure you're balancing out your quad work with exercises that target your hamstrings, because having strong hamstrings helps stabilize your knee joint.
Yeah, that balance is really important for injury prevention.
Absolutely. And if you are looking for safer leg exercises, the article suggests classic moves like lunges, squats, deadlifts, and step-ups. Those are all great options.
All right, let's shift our focus to the upper body now. Another exercise that often sparks debate is the behind the head shoulder press.
Ah, yes. Now, some people, like Olympic weightlifters who need that specific overhead range of motion for their sport, they might include it in their training. But for most people, it's probably not the best choice.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just trying to build some shoulder strength at the gym, it seems like there might be safer options.
Exactly. You see, the problem with this exercise is that when you bring the bar behind your head, it puts your shoulders in a really vulnerable position, especially your rotator cuff muscles.
So it's putting them at risk of injury.
Yeah, you're basically forcing your shoulders into a position that's not natural for them, and that can lead to inflammation and even tears in those rotator cuff muscles.
Ouch, no thanks.
The article recommends sticking with the standard overhead shoulder press, where the bar stays in front of your head. It's a much safer way to work your shoulders, and it's still super effective.
I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that.
Yeah, you'd think that behind the head would be better for targeting the back of your shoulders, but that's not really the case.
So let's move on to another exercise that I'm curious about. Triceps dips, specifically the ones you do on a bench. I know regular dips on parallel bars are considered a great bodyweight exercise, but the bench version seems to get a bad rap.
You're right. A lot of trainers advise against bench dips. The main reason is that it's not a very natural movement pattern. When you put your hands behind you on the bench and lower your body down, it puts a lot of stress on your shoulders.
Okay.
Your pecs, your chest muscles, they don't really get involved as much, so your shoulders end up bearing most of the weight.
I see.
And all that pressure can be really tough on the shoulder joint, especially that glenohumeral joint where your upper arm bone meets your shoulder blade. It can lead to compression and inflammation.
That makes sense.
And even if your form is pretty good, there's still a risk of developing shoulder impingement syndrome. That's when tendons get pinched in the shoulder joint. And the shoulder joint itself, it's not as stable as some other joints, and it doesn't have as good blood flow. So it's not really built to handle that kind of load.
So it's best to avoid putting your shoulders in that kind of compromised position.
Exactly. There are much better exercises for working your triceps that don't put so much stress on your shoulders.
So what would you recommend instead?
Well, you could try diamond push-ups or close grip bench presses. Cable pushdowns are another great option. All of those exercises target your triceps effectively without putting your shoulders at risk.
Okay, good to know. Another exercise that the Steel Supplements article mentions is the upright barbell row. This is a common one you see people doing for their shoulders and upper back, especially those traps. What's the issue with this exercise?
The main problem with the upright row is the way it forces your shoulders to rotate internally. You know, when you're lifting that barbell up towards your chin, keeping your elbows high and close to your body,
Yeah.
that movement, combined with the weight, can really squeeze the shoulder joint and increase the risk of impingement.
And that's when those rotator cuff tendons get pinched between the bones, right?
Right. And the thing about the upright row is that the damage can happen gradually. You might not even feel much pain at first, but over time, all that compression can wear down the tendons in your shoulder. And then one day, boom, you could end up with a serious tear.
So it's kind of like a ticking time bomb for your shoulders.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what are some better ways to work those muscles?
Well, lateral raises are a good option. They focus on lifting your arms out to the sides, which works the shoulders without putting as much stress on the joint. And of course, there are all sorts of variations of the shoulder press that you can do with dumbbells.
So you can still build strong shoulders without putting your rotator cuff at risk.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about another exercise that often generates a lot of debate, especially when it comes to shoulder health. The lat pull down behind the head.
Ah, yes, this one's a bit controversial.
Yeah.
It's definitely effective for working your lats, those big muscles in your back.
Yeah, I've definitely felt it in my lats when I've done it.
But the problem is that pulling the bar behind your head can put a lot of stress on your shoulders, more than they can really handle.
Really?
Yeah, it forces your shoulders into a really awkward position, and it can increase the risk of inflammation and tears in those rotator cuff muscles.
And I think I've also heard that it can be dangerous for your neck as well.
You're right. If you misjudge the bar as you're pulling it down, you can hit the back of your head. And a lot of people also tend to crane their necks forward when they do this exercise, which can strain the muscles in the neck and even put pressure on your spine.
So it's not just the shoulders we have to worry about.
No, it's multiple areas.
So what are some safer ways to work the lats?
The best way is to do lat pull-downs with the bar coming down in front of your chest. That allows for a more natural shoulder movement and takes the pressure off those sensitive joints.
Okay.
You could also try kneeling band pull-downs. Those are great because they provide resistance throughout the whole movement, and they don't force your shoulders into that compromised position.
All right, let's switch gears now and talk about a popular lower body machine, the leg press. It seems like everyone uses this machine at the gym.
Yeah, it's a real staple in the weight room. It lets you lift a lot of weight, which can be tempting. But there are definitely some things to be aware of when using the leg press.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, it puts a lot of pressure on your knees and your lower back, too.
I hadn't thought about the lower back.
Yeah, if you're not careful, you can really strain those muscles, especially if you're using a lot of weight.
Okay.
And it can also put stress on your pelvic floor muscles.
Really? What are those?
They're the muscles that support your bladder and other organs in your pelvis.
Oh,
And
wow.
if you're constantly pushing a lot of weight with your legs, it can weaken those muscles over time.
That's not something you hear about very often.
No, it's not. But it's something to be mindful of.
So is the leg press just a bad exercise then?
Not necessarily. It can be beneficial if you use it correctly, but there are definitely some things to keep in mind.
Like what?
Well, first of all, you don't want to go too heavy. Start with a weight that's manageable for you. And pay attention to your form. Keep your back flat against the seat and don't let your knees cave in.
Okay.
And if you're looking for safer alternatives, there are plenty of great lower body exercises that don't put as much stress on your joints.
Such as?
Squats are always a great option. You can do them with just your body weight, or you can add weight with dumbbells or a barbell. Lunges are another good one, and so are step-ups.
Those all sound good.
Yeah, and they're all more functional than the leg press because they mimic movements that you do in everyday life.
Now, speaking of machines, let's talk about another popular one, the Smith machine. It's often used for squats, but there's a lot of debate about whether it's actually a good way to squat.
Yeah, the Smith machine, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can be helpful for beginners because it provides a lot of stability. The bar is fixed in a vertical path, so you don't have to worry about balancing it.
Right. I've seen people use it for that reason. It feels safer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that stability can also be a drawback.
Really? How so?
Well, because the bar is fixed in place, it takes away some of the work that your stabilizer muscles would normally do during a free weight squat.
So you're not really working those muscles as much.
Right. And those stabilizer muscles are important for balance and injury prevention. So if you're only doing Smith machine squats, you might be missing out on some key benefits.
Interesting.
And another problem with the Smith machine is that it can force your body into an unnatural movement pattern.
How so?
Well, because the bar moves in a straight line, you can't really adjust your squat to fit your individual body mechanics. So if you have any mobility limitations, it can put stress on your joints.
Oh, I see.
Plus, a lot of people tend to place their feet too far forward on the Smith machine, which can put their lower back at risk.
So even though it might feel safer, it could actually be increasing your risk of injury in other ways.
Exactly.
So what are some safer alternatives for squatting?
Free weight squats are always the best option. You can use dumbbells or a barbell, and you can adjust your stance and form to fit your body.
Okay.
If you're new to squatting, you can start with just your body weight, or you can use a box to squat down to.
Great advice. Okay, next up we have the good morning exercise. This one sounds pretty harmless, but I've heard it can be quite dangerous for your back, especially if you do it first thing in the morning.
Yeah, you got to be careful with this one. The good morning is basically a hip hinge movement where you bend forward at the waist with a barbell across your upper back.
Okay, I've seen it done.
And the reason it's not recommended to do it first thing in the morning is because of the way our spinal discs work. You see, when you wake up in the morning, your discs are full of fluid. They haven't been compressed throughout the day yet.
Okay.
And that makes them more susceptible to injury, especially if you're doing a bending exercise like the good morning.
So it's like they're more vulnerable in the morning?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's best to avoid heavy bending exercises first thing in the morning. Give your discs some time to decompress before you put them under that kind of stress.
Good advice.
Now, if you do want to improve your hip hinge mechanics and hamstring flexibility, you can do some light good mornings without any weight. Maybe just your hands behind your head or crossed over your chest.
Okay.
But the key is to start really light and focus on perfect form.
All right, and last but not least on our list of potentially risky exercises, we have the bench press. Now, this is a classic exercise for building upper body strength.
Yeah, it's a great exercise for working your chest, shoulders, and triceps.
But our source calls it the most dangerous of all barbell lifts.
Well, it's not dangerous if you do it correctly,
Hmm.
but there's a risk involved if you're not careful.
Of course.
The main danger with the bench press is that you're lying on your back with a heavy weight over your chest.
Yeah,
So if you lose control of the bar, it could fall on you and cause serious injury.
that's a scary thought.
And even if you don't drop the bar, you could still injure yourself if you try to lift more weight than you can handle.
So ego lifting can be a real problem with the bench press.
Yeah, a lot of people get caught up in trying to lift as much weight as possible, and they end up sacrificing their form. And that's when injuries happen.
So what's the key to staying safe on the bench press?
First and foremost, use a spotter, someone who can help you if you get stuck.
Right.
And don't be afraid to start with a lighter weight. You can always increase the weight as you get stronger.
Okay.
And focus on maintaining good form throughout the entire lift. Keep your back flat on the bench, your feet planted firmly on the floor, and your elbows tucked in.
So it's all about being smart and listening to your body.
Exactly.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground on individual exercises. Now let's move on to fitness fads, those trendy workouts and diets that promise quick results.
Yeah, there are a lot of those floating around.
We found a great article from DexaFit that lists 15 fitness fads that they believe do more harm than good. And first up, we have weight loss pills. These often promise rapid weight loss with minimal effort.
Yeah, but the reality is that a lot of those pills are either ineffective or even dangerous.
Really?
Yeah, some of them contain ingredients that can cause serious side effects, like heart problems, liver damage, and even mood swings. And some of them have even been linked to an increased risk of strokes and heart attacks.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it's really scary. So if you're thinking about taking weight loss pills, you need to do your research and talk to your doctor about the risks.
Okay, good advice. What's next on the list? Waist trainers.
Oh yeah, those things. They claim to give you a smaller waist by compressing your midsection.
And people seem to believe it. I see them everywhere.
But the truth is that waist trainers don't actually reduce fat. They just squeeze your organs and make you sweat more.
So any results you see are temporary.
Yeah, and they can actually be harmful in the long run. All that compression can restrict blood flow, damage your organs, and even weaken your core muscles.
Okay, that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
All right, how about sauna suits?
Sauna suits are those rubber or plastic suits that people wear to make themselves sweat more during workouts.
I've seen those.
Yeah, and they can definitely make you sweat.
Right.
But all that sweating can lead to dehydration, which can be dangerous.
Right.
And the suits can also trap heat, which can lead to overheating.
So it's kind of like creating an artificial fever.
Yeah, and that can put a lot of stress on your body.
Okay, not good. What's next? Thigh gaps.
The thigh gap is that space between the inner thighs that some people strive for.
Yeah, I've seen pictures online.
But the thing is, whether or not you have a thigh gap is mostly determined by your genetics and your bone structure.
So it's not something you can really control.
Right, and trying to achieve a thigh gap through extreme dieting or exercise can be really harmful. It can lead to eating disorders and other health problems.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about clean eating?
Clean eating is generally a good thing. It means focusing on whole, unprocessed foods.
Right.
But the problem is that some people take it to the extreme and start eliminating entire food groups.
Oh, yeah.
And that can lead to nutrient deficiencies.
Right.
Plus, even healthy foods can be bad for you if you eat too much of them.
So moderation is key.
Exactly.
Okay, what about cutting carbs?
Cutting carbs can be helpful for some people, especially those who are trying to lose weight or manage their blood sugar.
Right.
But again, it's important to do it in moderation.
Okay.
You don't want to eliminate all carbs from your diet.
So which carbs are good and which ones are bad?
Good carbs are complex carbs, like those found in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains.
Okay.
Bad carbs are simple carbs, like those found in processed foods, sugary drinks, and white bread.
Okay, I think I get it.
The problem is that a lot of people cut out all carbs, both good and bad, and that can be detrimental to their health. So if you're going to cut carbs, make sure you're still getting enough fiber and other essential nutrients.
All right, what's next on the list? Juice cleanses.
Juice cleanses are another fad that promises to detoxify your body.
Yeah, I've heard about those.
But the truth is that your body is perfectly capable of detoxifying itself.
Really?
Yeah, your liver and kidneys do a great job of filtering out toxins.
So juice cleanses are unnecessary.
Exactly. And they can actually be harmful. They can lead to dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and even nutrient deficiencies.
Okay, so not a good idea.
Not really.
All right, what about hardcore group fitness classes?
Hardcore group fitness classes can be a great way to get a workout.
Yeah, I like the energy of those classes.
But it's important to start slowly and gradually increase the intensity.
Right.
If you do too much too soon, you can injure yourself.
Okay.
And one of the biggest risks with these classes is a condition called rhabdomyolysis.
Rhabdomyolysis.
Yeah, it's a breakdown of muscle tissue that can be caused by intense exercise. And it can be really serious. It can lead to kidney damage and even death.
So it's not something to mess around with.
Definitely not.
Right. How about obstacle races and mud runs?
Obstacle races and mud runs are fun and challenging,
Yeah, they look like a lot of fun.
but they also come with some risks.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, you could get injured. There's a lot of running, jumping, and climbing involved, and it's easy to twist an ankle or strain a muscle.
Right.
And there's also the risk of infection. You're running through mud and water, and there's a lot of close contact with other people.
So it's important to be careful.
Definitely.
Okay, what about YouTube workouts?
YouTube workouts can be a great resource,
Yeah, there are so many free workouts available online.
but the problem is that anyone can post a workout video on YouTube.
Right.
So there's no guarantee that the person leading the workout is qualified or that the workout is safe.
So you could be following bad advice.
Exactly.
So it's important to do your research and choose workouts from reputable sources. Okay, what about the macro diet?
The macro diet is a way of eating that focuses on hitting specific targets for protein, carbs, and fat.
I've heard of that.
And it can be effective for weight loss and muscle gain.
Okay.
But the problem is that it can be really restrictive and it can lead to nutrient deficiencies.
Right.
Plus, a lot of people who follow the macro diet end up eating a lot of processed foods.
So it's not as healthy as it sounds.
Not always.
Okay, what about colon cleansing?
Colon cleansing is another fad that promises to detoxify your body.
Yeah, I've seen ads for those.
But the truth is that colon cleansing is unnecessary and potentially harmful.
Really?
Yeah, it can disrupt your gut bacteria, dehydrate you, and even cause damage to your crop.
So it's best to avoid it.
Definitely.
Okay, what about cracked abs?
Cracked abs are another aesthetic ideal that's often promoted on social media.
Yeah, those ripped abs that you see on Instagram.
But the truth is that most people will never achieve cracked abs, no matter how much they diet or exercise. Yeah, it's just not genetically possible for everyone.
So it's setting people up for disappointment.
Exactly. And it can also lead to disordered eating and body image issues.
Okay, that's important to keep in mind. What about social media fitness challenges?
Social media fitness challenges can be motivating,
Yeah, they can be fun to do with friends.
but it's important to be realistic about your goals.
Okay.
Don't compare yourself to other people on social media. Everyone is different, and everyone progresses at their own pace.
Good point.
And be wary of challenges that promise quick results or require you to drastically change your diet or exercise routine.
Okay.
Those are often unsustainable and can be harmful to your health.
And finally, what about raw water?
Raw water is untreated water that some people believe is healthier than treated water.
I've heard of that.
But the truth is that raw water can contain harmful bacteria, viruses, and parasites that can make you sick.
So it's not worth the risk.
Definitely not.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground on fitness fads. Now let's move on to the final section of our deep dive, which is about workout dangers. We found an article from Men's Journal that highlights 5 ways that your workout itself can be dangerous, beyond specific exercises or trends. And first up, we have rhabdomyolysis, which we touched on earlier.
Yeah, rhabdo is a serious condition that can occur when your muscles are overworked. It causes muscle tissue to break down and release harmful substances into your bloodstream.
And that can lead to kidney damage.
Right. And in severe cases, it can even be fatal.
So it's important to know the signs and symptoms of rhabdo.
Yeah, the main symptom is severe muscle pain and tenderness. You might also notice that your urine is dark brown or reddish in color.
Okay, what else?
If you experience these symptoms, it's important to see a doctor right away.
All right, what's the next workout danger on the list?
Electrolyte imbalance. Electrolytes are minerals that are essential for your body to function properly.
Right, like sodium, potassium, and magnesium.
Exactly. And when you sweat, you lose electrolytes.
Oh.
So it's important to replenish them by drinking fluids that contain electrolytes, like sports drinks or coconut water.
Okay, what happens if you don't replenish your electrolytes?
Well, you could experience a range of symptoms like muscle cramps, fatigue, headache, and dizziness.
Okay, nothing too serious then.
Oh, but in severe cases, an electrolyte imbalance can be life-threatening. It can lead to seizures, irregular heartbeat, and even coma.
So it's important to take it seriously.
Absolutely.
All right, what's next on the list?
Exertional heat stroke. This is a condition that occurs when your body overheats during exercise.
Yeah, I know it's important to stay hydrated in hot weather.
Right. And it's also important to wear light-colored, loose-fitting clothing and to take breaks in the shade when needed.
Okay.
The symptoms of heat stroke include high body temperature, rapid heartbeat, headache, dizziness, nausea, and confusion.
And if you experience these symptoms, you need to seek medical attention immediately.
Absolutely. Heat stroke can be fatal if it's not treated promptly.
Okay, what's next? Hypothermia.
Hypothermia is a condition that occurs when your body temperature drops too low.
Yeah, I know it's important to dress warmly in cold weather.
Right. And it's also important to be aware of the signs and symptoms of hypothermia, which include shivering, slurred speech, confusion, and drowsiness.
Okay.
If you experience these symptoms, you need to get to a warm place and seek medical attention.
All right. And finally, what about dehydration?
Dehydration is a condition that occurs when your body doesn't have enough fluids.
Yeah, I know it's important to drink plenty of water, especially when you're exercising.
Right. And the symptoms of dehydration include thirst, dry mouth, fatigue, headache, dizziness, and dark-colored urine.
Okay.
If you experience these symptoms, you need to start drinking fluids right away.
All right, so that wraps up our deep dive into the potential dangers of exercise and fitness trends. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
Hopefully, this information will help you stay safe and healthy while you're pursuing your fitness goals.
Right. The key takeaway is that it's important to be informed and to listen to your body.
Exactly. Don't push yourself too hard, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
And if something doesn't feel right, stop doing it.
Yeah, your health is more important than any workout or fitness trend.
Absolutely.
So we encourage you to take some time to reflect on what we've discussed today and to think about how you can apply this information to your own fitness journey.
Maybe there are some exercises you need to reconsider, or maybe you need to be more mindful of your form.
Or maybe you're realizing that you need to slow down and listen to your body more.
Whatever it is, we hope that this deep dive has empowered you to make informed decisions about your health and fitness.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.